Hello, I'm very excited to be talking with Brian Knowles today. Brian is a human rights and whistleblower lawyer. He is based in Charleston, South Carolina, but works with clients all over the country and the world, right? Or mostly within the US,
All over the world.
all over the world. And we've been connected for a number of months now, and Brian has represented a number of very prominent whistleblowers, including Boeing whistleblowers, people who worked at companies affiliated with Boeing, so has this deep expertise in aviation whistleblowing, and generally is not unfamiliar with power dynamics and taking on powerful companies and powerful people. So thank you, Brian. I'm really excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me here today. I'm looking
Yes,
forward to our discussion.
yeah. So before we get into some of the details, I want to ask, you know, what tell me a little bit about yourself and what got you into this type of law. And I believe you're the first person in your family to go to college, but I want to know what inspires you from the early days, or what inspired you to do this work. Because as you and I have talked about in the past, it's not easy, but when you feel like you have to do it, you really feel like you have to do it. So yeah, I'd love to know about how you got into this type of work.
Yes, I grew up outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. And yeah, I was the first in my family to go to college. And I always just had this desire to help people. And I just thought being a lawyer would be one way to go about doing that. Because being a lawyer, you have a lot of ability to affect change for the positive. And you have the ability to affect change on a large scale sometimes. So yeah, that's what drew me to the law. And then I went to college at the College of Charleston in South Carolina, and then went down to Miami and went to law school, and then got my Juris Doctorate, and then did a 1 year extra for an LLM in human rights law, and then came back to Charleston, and I worked for a small defense firm starting out for a couple years where we defended government entities, and then went to another small firm for a couple of years, working on transactional work, setting up small companies and the like. And then decided I'd like to go out on my own and try this. So I left with two cases, and one of them was a contingency case, and one of them was an hourly case. And luckily, I got through it and was able to continue year after year to expand my practice. And I've been on my own for quite some time now. Um, with the whistleblowing side of it, that started around 2012, 2013, after Boeing had moved one of their manufacturing facilities to Charleston to build the 787 Dreamliner. And they were still building in Everett, Washington, and then also here in Charleston. And I had three people approach me about retaliation claims they had and hostile work environment claims. So, and then a few years after that, one of them coincidentally knew John Barnett and introduced John to us at the time when he was going through some struggles there at Boeing. And we eventually filed an Air 21 case on his behalf. But, whistleblowers really play a critical role in society. Without them, we wouldn't have knowledge about a lot of these problems that exist. And they act in the interest of public safety a lot of times, like these aviation whistleblowers. So I think they brought to light a lot of critical and valuable information that otherwise would have never been known. And, that poses a great risk to you, me, everybody that flies. So, it's not a self-interest type cause they take on. It's their interest is to see problems corrected and fixed that they believe should not be there.
Mhm.
So I also handle personal injury cases and the like, and do some construction defect cases. But I always work on the plaintiff side. Very rarely handle defense cases.
What do you think with your clients are some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about them?
I think in general with whistleblowers, if you look in the dictionary of what a whistleblower is, they have, uh, synonyms for things like snitch, a rat, things like that. And I think for some reason, for whatever reason, society oftentimes see people that are whistleblowers in that light.
Hmm.
And usually I think the people that see them in that light are the people that are perpetrating the whatever they're complaining about
Right.
because they don't want to be exposed. So I think society in general, though, should acknowledge what these folks do, which I think they do, and I think these aviation uh, clients that I have has brought a tremendous amount of media coverage because everybody flies, and I think people really are concerned, like what's going on at Boeing, you know, as they should be. I mean, it's concerning to me just as a person that flies, not just their lawyer.
Do you, when you started working on these cases, would you think twice before you got onto a Boeing plane? Would you feel nervous when you were on flights?
Well, I mean, personally, I just will not fly on a Boeing.
You won't? Okay.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go to Google and check the type of plane that for the different flights, and I just based on what I know, I just will. I'm not going to fly a Boeing.
Yeah. Could you have ever imagined when you started out your legal career that you would be seeing this level of corruption at an American company?
Well, there's corruption everywhere.
Yeah, of course, but
It didn't really surprise me.
it didn't surprise you. Because I talk to some lawyers sometimes who, not that they have, delusions of grandeur about how good things are. Obviously, they became lawyers to fix problems, but then they say that it's so much worse than they actually thought that it was in law school. Um, so I'm just wondering with the level of retaliation, yes, you expect some level of retaliation by a corporate entity whose incentives are not aligned with the everyday person's incentives, but I guess I'm wondering if it exceeded your wildest imagination of what it could have actually been. The
Yeah,
corruption
I
and
see what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, it didn't surprise me that um, it doesn't surprise me not only in companies like Boeing that we have these issues, but I am surprised at the extent of it within the company and how many people that have come forward with claims of being retaliated against, and just it's the same story over and over. It's really unfortunate. I mean, I don't think that's the way you run a company. I mean, you can run a company and make profit, but I think you have to be ethical about it and not engage in illegal conduct
right, right,
that could jeopardize safety. I mean, we're talking about safety here and quality. And with Boeing, they're our number one exporter in the
hmm,
country. They play a critical role in national security. I mean, they have a lot of government contracts with military, and then of course they have the space side of it,
hmm,
which still has two astronauts stranded in space, unfortunately. And then you have
really.
the commercial aviation side of it that carries lives from all over the world. And it's just unfortunate that the
Yeah.
company uh, went down this path.
Do you do you think that the current system, the legal system and the whistleblower protections are set up appropriately to protect people who come forward, or do you think that there's still what would be your amendments to the way in which whistleblowers are protected when they come forward, specifically in this industry, aerospace and aviation.
I mean, it's a total disaster in my opinion. I mean,
Yeah.
you have Air 21, AIR 21. That's the aviation whistleblower retaliation statute. So for any aviation employee, if they engage in protected conduct, such as like complaining about quality and safety issues, it's prohibited that the company retaliate against them. And retaliation could be anything from, demoting them, moving them around, harassing them. And this law is your sole remedy. Number one, nobody really knows about it, even aviation employees. You would think Boeing would have educated their workforce that this law exists because you guys are working in aviation. And Boeing likes to say they have strict anti-retaliation policies in place. Well, the employees don't even know about Air 21. So that, number one, is troubling just from an internal perspective. They should require training and education on that and teaching the workers their rights. But number two, there's a very short statute of limitations. So here in South Carolina, if you get in a car wreck, you have 3 years to file a lawsuit if you have injury for an injury claim, right? Well, aviation whistleblower has 90 days. So
That's crazy.
that is absolutely crazy.
So 90 days from the first time that you see or document the issue, you have 90 days to file something.
Unless there's potentially a continuing effect of the retaliation. But from the last date of retaliation, you have to file. A lot of these folks, they don't stick around with the company because they're terminated. So the person's terminated. They're sitting there trying to figure out, well, what am I going to do for another job? The aviation community here is pretty tight in the U.S. And they have families they're trying to provide for. They're not sitting around wondering, hey, do I have 90 days to file a retaliation case,
Mm-hmm.
And so there was quite a few cases here in South Carolina that were filed in federal court where they were trying to get around the person had missed the 90 days, and against Boeing now, and all those cases were dismissed because the law says that Air 21 is your sole remedy for retaliation.
Do you think that with this increase in crashes ever since Trump took office, that there could be some sort of a push to change that? Or I guess it would need the buy-in from Congress.
I think Congress would have to amend it,
Yeah.
which is one thing we've been pushing for. We've been working with GAP, the Government Accountability Project out of D.C.
You're not working with Doge?
No, to try to get that law amended. And what's crazy is that you can't get like right into court immediately. You have to file through the OSHA under the Department of Labor. You can go online and file this Air 21 complaint, and then they assign an investigator. So you would think an investigator would have like true investigative abilities, like, hey, I've got a subpoena, Boeing, provide me with this, this, and this. Well, they don't. So all they can do is, what happens is we file our Air 21, then Boeing, for instance, will file what they call a position statement, laying out, we didn't do anything wrong, and this is the reasons. And then all the investigator can do is like go to them and say, can you produce this witness, that witness, or this document? And of course, I don't necessarily know if that actually occurs. And like in John Barnett's case, as one example, it took, we filed his in 2017. We didn't get a decision until 2021. So you got 4 years of sitting around waiting on an administrative investigation for them to figure out.
Stalling? Boeing is stalling as much as they can?
I think it's just been a lack of resources at the agency, and they're understaffed, underfunded.